Hello everyone, welcome to Dnyanadeep. In this UPSC Simplified series, we are going to discuss one more question from UPSC Mains Geography section. So here is the question: what is water stress? How and why does it differ regionally in India? So again, we find that there have been a lot of questions regarding water resources, be it water scarcity or freshwater scarcity, water stress in India or all over the world. There have been repetitive questions on this particular part, so we know in what direction these questions go and how our preparation should be aligned with this particular direction. Now coming to the question, there is locus and focus. I have mentioned here locus is water stress and focus is the regional deviation in the water stress which is found in India. Now to introduce in this particular question, I can take two ways. One can be defining what water stress is. This can be one very generic, one very simple way to introduce, and another can be mentioning any fact, that is the incidence of water stress in India or maybe all over the world, but typically try to mention the incidence of water stress in India. You can quote a number, the proportion of population which is facing acute water shortages, so on and so forth. So that is something again you need to prepare, but this can be another line of introduction. Now when it comes to making a choice between definition based introduction or fact based introduction, I will personally prefer the later one, that is fact based introduction, because if I go for a definition based introduction, then there is hardly much is left in the part 1 of the body, right? Because in part 1 anyway I have to address what water stress is. Okay, so we'll once again go back to question, what is water stress? So if I define, then in body part I'll not be able to write much regarding water stress. So what I will do, though I have given here in part 1, I can also, then if I go for a definition based approach, then in part 1 directly I will go for regional variation, or I will mention some facts on regional variation of water stress in India, right? So this can be one way. Another way which I find that is also going to work is mention fact in the introduction, then in body part first mention what has been asked, that is what is water stress. Give around 20 to 30 words description on water stress, what exactly water stress means. Now here I have also going to write regarding the water stress condition in India and what regional variation we find. If you go back to question, what do you find in question? In question we find that what has been asked, how and why does water stress differing regionally in India. They did not ask regarding the facts of water stress in India. There is no direct mention of this particular part, right? But even though I have to mention the regional variation in water stress in India, so I will quote some facts. I'll mention some states. This and this area of India is facing acute water shortage or water stress, right? And there is a regional variation. Some regions are receiving good amount of water, or some regions are having good availability of water, other they are not having availability of water. So these are the facts I have to mention to start my answer, because unless I put forward these facts, there is absolutely no way I can argue on how and why there is a regional variation in water stress, right? So that is why you have to present this particular context. Do not give a lot of emphasis to this. Again, spend some 20-30 words, not more than that. You do not have to write a paragraph or even a half-page answer on this particular part. Just mention a few facts and that should be sufficient. Now, later part, I will go for causes. Now, when it comes to causes, in causes, I have made two factors or two sections again: geographic causes and anthropogenic causes. When it comes to geographic causes, if we look at the spatial variation of rainfall in India, there is a great amount of variation. Not all regions of India receive equal amount of rainfall. Western parts most of the time remains dry or arid, and good amount of rainfall is received in the eastern parts of the country. Okay, so just understand what is there? There is a naturally geographical variation, and this natural variation will anyway translate into water stress, which has regional variation. Okay, now further we have to talk about the geological structural variations. Not all parts of India are same in geological structure. If you go to Deccan Plateau is covered with a basalt. Now, when there is a layer such as basalt, it makes an impermeable layer at the top. There will be no percolation of water, no sufficient or adequate recharge of groundwater, and that is how there is a water stress which is building up over the period of year in the Deccan Plateau region. Same is not the case in the Indo-Gangetic Plain, and that is why I am also mentioning the geological structural variation. In geographic variation, I can then also mention about rivers. Not all regions of India have same condition when it comes to the river water. If you go to Gangetic Plain, a lot of water is being received from Himalayas. They have plentiful of rivers, good amount of water availability of there. Again, Plateau region or western parts of the plateau, they do not have sufficient number of rivers, and again this will result into water stress in the western part. So these are some geographical reasons which I have to mention. Then anthropogenic factors. When we go for anthropogenic factors, talk about population pressure. So whatever water resources we have available in the western part of the country, as compared to that, the population pressure which is there in the western part of the country is humongous, right? There are a lot of million plus cities we find concentrated in the western parts of the country. Similarly, if you go to some core urban areas in Maharashtra, Gujarat, or even Karnataka, again those become the severely water stressed region because a lot of population pressure is there and not adequate water resources or reservoirs are there. Same is not the condition when you go to northern plains. If you go to northern plains, enough water is available, or even the eastern part, enough water is available, and then there is no population stress or population pressure which has built up in concentrated areas, right? So that is something which is going to differ regionally. Agricultural practices. Let's talk about agricultural practices. Let's talk about Maharashtra's agriculture practice. Though this is a parched region or semi-arid region, the important crop or a major crop which is cultivated here will be sugarcane, which requires a lot of water, right? And that will anyway result into a lot of water stress. Same is not the condition everywhere else. Groundwater use, it also differs, but it differs again from geographical factors. A lot of groundwater is extracted in the western parts of the country. Same is not the case in the eastern parts of the country. Water management is again an issue. Now, when it comes to water management infrastructure or infrastructure related to water storing, you will find that in eastern parts of country or the northeastern parts of country or some hilly areas, not enough infrastructure has been built. And as there is no infrastructure to store flowing water, it somehow builds up into water stress. If you go to plain region, enough infrastructure is there. If you go to some western states, in some parts of western state, there is enough infrastructure. Again, if I go to south, there is no adequate infrastructure. Again, there will be water stress in the southern parts. So these are some of the anthropogenic factors I have to mention. Climate change and its variable impact. That is something again we need to figure in. Western parts of the country are much more affected by climate change and associated weather phenomena. Same is not the case with the eastern parts of the country. And that is how again it will translate into regional variation in water stress in India. Now I have to draw a map. On map I will show in which states or in which geographical areas there is a severe or acute shortage of water. That is something needs to be presented in this particular map. Finally, I will conclude with a way forward. I will say what sustainable use can be, sustainable development goals can be put here. We can also talk about improving efficiency of water use. Also, there can be mentioning of sharing and equitability when it comes to water resources. So that is about this particular question. We'll see you again in next question. Thank you.